I never thought a single summer could change my life so completely. It started as an ordinary day, the kind you barely notice at first, and somehow ended with me staring at my reflection in a way I never had before. I was 16, living with my dad, and my stepmom, Clara, had just moved in. She was beautiful, stylish, and a little intimidating in that way adults sometimes are when they seem to know exactly what you're thinking before you even do. I thought I knew my place in the house. My dad's quiet, friendly, and usually oblivious, and I just stayed out of trouble. That's what I thought, anyway. The first time it happened, it didn't even feel like a punishment. It was supposed to be a joke. Clara caught me sneaking a snack from the kitchen late at night, something I'd done countless times, and instead of scolding me, she gave me this mischievous look that I couldn't read. "Since you think you're so clever, let's make a little game out of this," she said. I laughed nervously, not knowing what she meant. Then she handed me a dress. A dress. Pink, frilly, completely unlike anything I would ever imagine wearing. My face went red. I stammered, trying to protest, but she just smiled that knowing smile and said, "You'll understand why later." I didn't understand. Not even a little. I slipped it out of the box, the fabric soft and foreign in my hands. My heart raced with embarrassment, with curiosity, with fear. She gave me strict instructions. Wear it, sit in the living room, and act, well, as she said, like someone who appreciates being noticed. My stomach sank. I was trembling, imagining my dad walking in. But he didn't. Clara left me there alone for what felt like hours, her footsteps fading down the hall. I sat on the couch, the dress awkward against my skin, feeling ridiculous, and yet something strange started to happen. I noticed the way the fabric felt, how it moved with me, the way the colors seemed to catch the light differently than any of my usual clothes. I felt different. Not in a bad way, not yet, just different. And then she came back, and I realized I was blushing not just because of embarrassment, but because of the way she looked at me. Proud. Almost approving. "What do you see?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't know. I just feel weird." She crouched down, looking me straight in the eyes. "Weird is fine. Weird is growth. Sometimes, the world wants us to see ourselves in ways we never imagined. You're about to see a side of yourself you didn't know existed." It started small. A few outfits here and there, little challenges she'd set for me. Sit like this, walk like that, smile for an imaginary audience. And each time, the mirror became a little less scary. The reflection started to feel mine. I noticed things: how my hair fell, how my posture could change everything, how small details like a necklace or a ribbon could make me feel confident, in control, even if no one else was watching. By the second week, the changes weren't just mental. My body felt different. My voice, soft at first, began to feel more delicate when I practiced talking the way she suggested. She encouraged me to express myself, to try styles I never would have touched before, to see what fit who I was becoming. At first, I resisted. My friends teased me over the phone, calling me a weirdo for spending hours in my room, but I couldn't stop. There was something addictive about the discovery, the secrecy, the quiet thrill of being someone I never expected. Then came the hardest moment. My dad came home early from work one afternoon. I was mid-transformation, trying on a blouse and skirt combination Clara had picked out. My heart dropped when I saw him in the doorway, but he froze, unsure of what he was seeing. I panicked, stammered, tried to explain, but before I could, Clara appeared, calm, radiant, confident. She took my hand and said, "It's okay. Let him see who you are becoming. You're still you, just more of you." To my surprise, he smiled. Tentatively at first, like he was testing the waters, then more warmly. "You look happy," he said. And I realized that's all that mattered: being happy, even if it scared me, even if it looked strange to the world outside our house. That moment became a turning point. The secrecy wasn't about shame anymore. It was about self-discovery. The weeks that followed were intense. Clara's punishments, as she called them, were no longer punishments at all. They were lessons. Each outfit, each task, each challenge she set, like walking down the hall as if I were presenting myself to an audience, was about learning confidence, learning how to inhabit a version of myself I had been too scared to meet. I started experimenting with hairstyles, with accessories, with the way I carried my hands or tilted my head. I was transforming, yes, but not into someone else. Into me, just fuller, braver, more visible. There were moments of doubt. Some nights, I'd look in the mirror and panic, thinking, this isn't me. This is a trick, a game. And then Clara would appear, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a grin, and remind me, you're allowed to be different. You're allowed to be more than what you thought you were. Fear doesn't make you wrong, it makes you human. Those words sank in deeper than any lecture or scolding ever could. The final test came at the end of summer. Clara had arranged a small family gathering, a barbecue in our backyard. I was nervous, my transformation almost complete. She handed me an outfit, a flowing light dress with subtle colors that somehow felt like me, finally. My hair was styled the way I had practiced, my makeup subtle but enhancing. She smiled, and for the first time, I saw not a stepmom, not a mentor, but a guide who had led me through a journey I never expected to take. When I walked into the backyard, all eyes turned. I expected judgment, laughter, whispers, but instead, there were smiles, nods, even applause from my dad. I realized something profound. The courage to be seen as myself, fully and unapologetically, was more powerful than any fear I had ever known. That day, I felt whole in a way I never had. I understood that my identity wasn't a mask or a game, it was a spectrum, a story I could shape and explore with bravery. By the time the summer ended, I had fully embraced my transformation. Not just the way I looked, but the way I thought, the way I moved through the world, the way I allowed myself to dream. I had secrets, yes, but they were mine, empowering rather than shameful. Clara's punishments had been the catalyst I never knew I needed, pushing me toward courage, self-discovery, and a sense of beauty I had never allowed myself to feel. I sometimes look back at those first nights, trembling in that pink dress, and I laugh quietly to myself. How scared I was, how unsure, how convinced I was that I had to hide. And yet, that fear, that trembling, led me here to a reflection I love, a voice I embrace, a self I am proud to be. The summer didn't just change how I looked. It changed how I lived, how I thought, how I understood who I was meant to be. Now, when I see that dress sitting in my wardrobe, I smile. Not because of what it is, but because of what it represents. A journey from fear to courage, from hiding to being seen, from nephew to niece, from someone who doubted herself to someone who knows the power of embracing every part of who she is. And every time I step in front of the mirror, I remember Clara's words, her mischievous grin, the summer that taught me that transformation isn't about changing into someone else, it's about finally meeting yourself. And that's a story I'll carry with me forever. After that summer, I thought I had reached the end of my transformation, but the truth was, it was only the beginning. School started again, and suddenly, I had to navigate a world outside the house, friends, classmates, the judgment of people who didn't know the journey I had been on. At first, I tried to hide it. I wore baggy sweaters, avoided mirrors, kept my hair in a simple ponytail. I thought I could compartmentalize this part of myself, keep it locked away for home only. But it didn't feel right. The confidence I had built over the summer felt too strong to hide completely. One morning, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror at school. My reflection startled me not because I looked different to anyone else, but because I realized how much I had grown comfortable in my own skin. My shoulders weren't slouched, my eyes held a spark I hadn't noticed before, and my hands moved with a subtle grace that felt natural. For the first time, I thought, maybe the world can see me this way too. It wasn't easy. Some friends were curious, some confused, and a few even mocked me in ways that stung. But I learned something crucial. It didn't matter what they thought. The reflection in the mirror, the quiet smile that grew each morning, was mine to own. Clara's lessons echoed in my mind the way she had pushed me, guided me, taught me that courage isn't about absence of fear, but choosing to move forward despite it. Home was my sanctuary. Clara noticed the changes immediately. She would peek into my room with a sly smile, often commenting, "I think you're ready for a new challenge." And somehow, she always knew just what would push me further. Sometimes it was a daring outfit I wouldn't have touched before, sometimes a hairstyle that scared me, or a subtle performance in front of the family, testing my confidence in tiny ways. Each challenge was like a step into myself, a chance to strengthen the courage I had discovered that summer. The hardest moment came during a family gathering a few weeks later. I had been practicing quietly, but my little cousin, Sarah, spotted me adjusting a ribbon in my hair and asked, loud enough for several relatives to hear, "Why are you wearing that like a girl?" My stomach dropped. The laughter that followed was like a punch I wasn't prepared for. My heart pounded, my hands trembled, and for a moment, I wanted to disappear. Then Clara appeared, placing a hand on my shoulder. She didn't scold anyone, didn't try to hide me. Instead, she said, "Because she wants to. And that's all that matters." Her voice carried authority, calm and unwavering. Something in me shifted. I straightened my back, took a breath, and said, "Yes, I do." It was simple, but it felt monumental. In that moment, I realized that accepting yourself in front of others, especially when they don't immediately understand, was part of the transformation, just as important as any outfit or pose. From then on, things started to settle. I became more confident in my choices, more fluid in my expression. At home, Clara continued her guidance, always balancing mischief with encouragement. She taught me how small gestures, adjusting a collar, tilting my head, shifting weight gracefully, could change how I felt and how I was perceived. I learned the power of subtlety, of quiet confidence, of owning the space I occupied. By winter, the house had become my stage. I experimented with colors, textures, accessories, and hairstyles in ways I never thought possible. Each morning, I looked in the mirror and felt proud of who I was becoming. It wasn't about dressing like someone else, it was about revealing layers of myself that had always been there, waiting to be seen. Even my dad noticed the change. He didn't comment much, but the way he smiled when I walked past, the way he sometimes lingered in conversation just to watch me speak, made me feel validated and supported. School remained challenging, but I learned to navigate it with strategy and grace. I discovered friends who were accepting, allies who didn't question me, and even a few who were curious in ways that led to interesting conversations rather than judgment. Each interaction became a chance to practice confidence, authenticity, and resilience. I realized that transformation wasn't just about appearance, it was about communication, courage, and integrity. And then came the spring festival. Clara suggested I enter a small performance, a monologue paired with a demonstration of elegance, confidence, and self-expression. At first, I froze at the thought. Speaking in front of people was terrifying, but she encouraged me. "You've done the hard work," she said. "Now it's time to show the world the courage you carry." The day of the festival, I felt every nerve in my body tense. My hands shook slightly as I adjusted my outfit, a soft dress that flowed naturally, paired with minimal accessories. My hair framed my face perfectly, my makeup subtle yet enhancing. I stepped onto the stage, heart racing, and looked out at the audience. There were familiar faces and strangers, all waiting. I took a deep breath and began. At first, my voice wavered, but I remembered Clara's lessons. I visualized the summer, the dress, the challenges, the private triumphs in front of the mirror, and slowly, my voice grew stronger. Each word, each gesture, each movement became natural, authentic. The applause at the end was overwhelming, not because I craved validation, but because it confirmed something deeper, that I could step into the world fully as myself. Afterward, Clara hugged me tightly. "See," she whispered, "you were always ready. You just needed to believe it." And in that hug, I felt gratitude, pride, and love all at once. I realized that my transformation wasn't just my own, it was a collaboration, a journey guided by someone who believed in me before I fully believed in myself. By the end of the school year, I had fully embraced my identity. The shy, hesitant nephew had transformed into a confident niece, comfortable in every corner of my life. Friends, family, strangers, I didn't hide anymore. Each reflection in the mirror reminded me of the summer that changed everything, the challenges that taught me courage, and the guidance that led me to see myself as I truly was. Looking back now, I understand something profound. Transformation isn't about changing for anyone else. It's about discovering the parts of yourself that have always existed, but that fear, doubt, or expectation kept hidden. It's about courage, patience, and self-love. And above all, it's about the people who guide us, challenge us, and support us along the way. I smile at the memory of that first pink dress, the trembling, the fear. What I once thought was punishment turned out to be a gift, a path to self-discovery, acceptance, and authenticity. And I carry that lesson with me every day. Transformation isn't just about the clothes we wear or the way we look. It's about the way we inhabit the world, the courage to be seen, and the love we allow ourselves to feel. That's my story. From scared, hesitant nephew to confident, proud niece. From fear to courage. From hiding to being seen. And it all began with a mischievous stepmom, a pink dress, and the summer that changed my life forever. The months that followed were a mix of small victories and quiet struggles. Every morning, I woke up and faced a choice: retreat into the comfort of old habits or step into the person I was becoming. Most days, I chose the latter. I started experimenting with outfits in more subtle ways, choosing colors and styles that reflected who I felt I was inside. I discovered that even small things, a different scarf, a slight change in posture, could make a world of difference in the way I felt. School, however, remained a challenge. There were whispers in the hallways, curious glances, and questions I wasn't always ready to answer. Some days I wanted to hide, to pretend none of it mattered. But the reflection I saw in the mirror every morning reminded me that hiding was no longer an option. Clara had taught me too well. Courage wasn't just about standing on stage, it was about showing up for yourself every single day, even when no one else was watching. One afternoon, a situation arose that tested me more than anything before. I was walking to my locker when a group of older students blocked my path. One of them smirked. "Hey, aren't you different now? Trying to be a girl or something?" My stomach sank. The laughter that followed felt like it would crush me. My first instinct was to shrink, to disappear. But then I remembered Clara's words, her calm confidence, the way she had always encouraged me to meet the world head-on. I straightened my shoulders, looked them in the eye, and said quietly but firmly, "I'm me. That's all you need to know." There was a pause. The smirks faltered. And then, slowly, they stepped aside. That small moment of standing firm changed something inside me. I realized that courage wasn't just for performances or outfits, it was for life, for the tiny moments that seemed insignificant but actually mattered the most. Back at home, Clara noticed the change immediately. She smiled knowingly, as if she had expected it all along.
"You're learning," she said.
"Not just about appearances, but about who you are. That's the hardest lesson of all." Her praise, quiet but sincere, felt like sunlight on my skin. I realized then that my transformation wasn't just about becoming more visible, it was about becoming more myself, in ways I had never imagined. Over the next few weeks, I started to take risks in small, deliberate ways. I experimented with hairstyles, tried bolder colors, and even practiced speaking in a slightly softer, more expressive voice. Each change felt like unlocking a part of me that had been hidden for too long. And every time I caught my reflection, I felt a surge of pride and recognition. I wasn't pretending, I was discovering. The culmination of this journey came unexpectedly. My school announced a talent showcase, a chance for students to present performances, speeches, or artistic expressions. Clara encouraged me to participate, suggesting something that combined my newfound confidence with creativity. At first, I hesitated. Public performance terrified me. But then I remembered the summer, the first pink dress, the lessons, the small victories, and I realized that this was my chance to fully embrace the person I had become. I worked for days preparing. I wrote a short piece about self-discovery, courage, and transformation, something deeply personal yet universal. I practiced my delivery, my gestures, even my expressions. I chose an outfit that felt authentically me, comfortable, confident, and expressive. When the day came, my heart raced as I stepped onto the stage. I saw faces in the audience, some familiar, some strangers, some skeptical, but I focused on the voice I had been cultivating, the person I had learned to be. As I spoke, I felt the tension melt away. Each word, each pause, each subtle movement was deliberate. I wasn't performing for approval. I was performing for myself, for the journey that had led me here. The applause at the end was thunderous, but more importantly, it felt like recognition not just from others but from myself. I had stepped fully into who I was, and the world had seen me. Afterward, Clara hugged me tightly, her smile radiant. "You've done it," she whispered. "You've embraced yourself, fully and bravely. That's the true transformation." Her words, simple yet profound, stayed with me long after the applause faded. I realized that the journey wasn't over, it never would be, but I now had the tools, the confidence, and the courage to navigate it. The months that followed were filled with quiet growth and subtle victories. I became more comfortable in social situations, more confident in expressing myself, and more at peace with the reflection I saw in the mirror each morning. My relationship with Clara deepened. She became not just a guide, but a true mentor, someone who had shown me the power of trust, patience, and belief. Looking back now, I understand something profound. Transformation isn't about changing to fit someone else's expectations. It's about discovering and embracing the parts of yourself that have always existed, the courage to face fear, and the willingness to show the world who you truly are. The first pink dress, the trembling, the secret lessons, they weren't punishment. They were a gift, a path that led me to confidence, self-expression, and authenticity. I smile at the memory, realizing that the journey from nephew to niece, from fear to courage, from hiding to being seen, isn't a story with a neat ending. It's ongoing, evolving, and deeply human. And every day, as I step in front of the mirror, adjust a ribbon, or choose an outfit, I remember that summer, that first dress, and the stepmom who showed me the transformative power of love, trust, and bravery. I carry that lesson with me every day. Transformation isn't just about what you wear or how you look, it's about how you inhabit the world, the courage to be seen, and the love you allow yourself to feel. And in that, I have finally found myself. After the festival, life settled into a new rhythm, but it wasn't always easy. Each morning I woke up, I faced a familiar tug-of-war between comfort and courage. Some days, I wanted to pull the blankets over my head and hide from the world, from curious glances at school, from the uncertainty of social interactions. But more and more, I found myself reaching for outfits that felt like me, practicing gestures and expressions in front of the mirror, and imagining myself walking confidently through the halls. Clara was always nearby, quietly guiding me. Sometimes she would peek in with a mischievous grin, handing me a new dress or suggesting a subtle change to my hairstyle. "Try this," she'd say, "and see how it feels to own it." At first, even small adjustments made my heart race, but over time, I began to notice the power of small, intentional choices. A tilt of the head, a relaxed hand gesture, the way I stood, all of it mattered. Slowly, I was learning that transformation wasn't just external. It was internal. It was about learning to inhabit my own body and presence fully, with confidence and grace. School remained a delicate balancing act. Some friends were curious but supportive, others were confused, and a few teased in ways that stung more than I expected. There were moments when I wanted to retreat, to hide in baggy clothes and avoid mirrors entirely. But then I remembered the summer, the pink dress, the private lessons, and Clara's words. Courage is choosing to show up even when fear tempts you to hide. That thought became my anchor. One afternoon, I was walking down the hallway when a group of classmates began whispering, clearly staring. One of them stepped forward and asked, half mocking, "Why are you dressing like a girl?" My heart pounded. My face flushed. For a split second, I felt like disappearing. But then, deep down, I remembered all the small victories: the first pink dress, the summer afternoons practicing in front of the mirror, the first applause at the school festival. I straightened my shoulders, looked them directly in the eye, and said, "Because this is who I am." The hallway went quiet. The smirks faded. Some stared, others walked away, but I felt a surge of something profound. The moment I stood firmly as myself, unapologetically, I realized that external opinions mattered far less than my own sense of identity. At home, Clara noticed immediately. She didn't scold, didn't overreact, she simply smiled knowingly. "You're learning," she said softly. "Not just how to look the part, but how to be yourself, fully. That's the hardest lesson of all." Her praise felt like warmth on a cold morning, and I realized she had been preparing me all along, not just for appearances, but for life itself. The next few weeks were a mix of experimentation and self-discovery. I began taking small risks, trying bolder colors, experimenting with accessories, practicing subtle expressions and gestures. Each morning, I would stand in front of the mirror, adjust my hair or outfit, and take a deep breath. Each adjustment made me feel more confident, more authentic. I began to notice the way people responded, not just the looks they gave, but the way they listened when I spoke, the way conversations shifted when I held myself with quiet assurance. Even at home, the transformation continued in subtle ways. I started helping more with household tasks, learning new routines, and taking pride in my appearance and actions. Clara occasionally challenged me with little assignments, arranging a table elegantly, preparing a simple meal, practicing polite conversation, but each one felt like another step in my growth, a way to internalize the confidence and poise I had been learning all summer. One day, I had a near-disaster moment that could have undone months of progress. I had left a carefully chosen outfit out in the living room, and my dad walked in unexpectedly. My heart sank. I froze, expecting confusion or worse, judgment. But instead, he simply raised an eyebrow, smiled faintly, and said, "You look happy." That was all. Just a simple acknowledgement. And yet it felt monumental. It reminded me that sometimes acceptance comes quietly, without fanfare, but it is no less powerful. By late spring, I began to feel fully comfortable in my own skin. The shy, hesitant nephew had been replaced by someone who could navigate the world with confidence, subtle grace, and authenticity. I could express myself without fear, take small risks, and embrace the attention and curiosity of others without shame. Each day was another step, another opportunity to affirm who I was becoming. Clara remained my guide, but more as a mentor than a stepmom now. We spent afternoons discussing self-expression, identity, and confidence. She encouraged me to journal, reflect, and plan, reminding me that transformation was ongoing, not a one-time event. "The world will always challenge you," she said, "but the person you've become is stronger than the fear." Never forget that. Summer returned, and with it, the chance for a new milestone, a neighborhood gathering where I could fully express myself in public. I chose an outfit that reflected my personal style, elegant, expressive, and unmistakably me. I wore it with confidence, walking into the crowd with a steady gaze and a calm smile. Conversations flowed easily. People reacted with curiosity, smiles, and even admiration. For the first time, I realized that transformation wasn't just about my reflection, it was about presence, about the way I moved through the world. Afterward, I returned home, tired but exhilarated. Clara greeted me with a warm smile. "You've come far," she said. "Farther than most ever get the chance to go." I felt a swell of gratitude, realizing that this journey had been more than clothes or appearances. It had been a journey into courage, self-awareness, and authenticity. By the end of the year, I had fully embraced my identity. Friends, family, and acquaintances all saw me differently, not because I had changed for them, but because I had grown into myself. I understood that transformation isn't a destination. It's a process, a series of choices, reflections, and courageous steps. Each outfit, each practice, each moment of doubt had contributed to a stronger, more confident me. Looking back now, I understand something profound. Transformation isn't about fitting someone else's expectations or changing to please others. It's about discovering the parts of yourself that have always existed, learning to inhabit them fully, and having the courage to be seen. The first pink dress, the secret lessons, the trembling and uncertainty, they weren't punishments. They were gifts, guiding me toward confidence, authenticity, and self-love. Every time I step in front of the mirror now, I see someone who has traveled a long, sometimes difficult path, but also someone who has discovered the courage to face fear, the strength to express herself, and the joy of being fully alive. That journey from nephew to niece, from fear to courage, from hiding to being seen, continues every day. And I carry it with me, grateful for the lessons, the guidance, and the transformation that has shaped the person I am today. As the months passed, life became a careful balancing act between school, friends, and home. Each day presented new challenges, and yet I began to face them with a quiet resilience I hadn't known before. Some mornings, I would wake up feeling unsure, staring at my reflection and wondering if the confidence I had built would hold. Other days, I would stand in front of the mirror, adjust my hair, smooth the fabric of my outfit, and feel an unmistakable sense of pride. It was a cycle of doubt and triumph, and I began to recognize that both were necessary. One afternoon, an unexpected test arrived. I had been invited to a study group at a friend's house, and I knew that showing up there would mean being seen in a way I hadn't yet attempted outside the school or my family. I hesitated at the front door, my heart pounding, my hands trembling slightly. What if they laughed? What if they didn't understand? For a fleeting moment, I considered retreating, returning home to safety. Then I remembered Clara's advice. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped inside. At first, the room was quiet. Eyes lingered, whispers started. I felt my face flush, a familiar wave of anxiety washing over me. But then I smiled, offered a simple greeting, and allowed myself to sink into the moment. Slowly, the tension eased. My friends chatted, joked, and eventually, curiosity turned to acceptance. By the time I left, I realized I had survived, even thrived, in an environment that once would have felt impossible. Home remained my sanctuary. Clara continued her guidance, though now it was less about instruction and more about partnership. We spent long afternoons talking about identity, self-expression, and the subtle art of confidence. She would give me little challenges, writing a short speech, preparing a small meal, arranging a room elegantly, but each task was an opportunity to practice poise, patience, and self-assurance. I began to see that transformation wasn't only about how I looked, but about how I carried myself and how I approached every interaction. One evening, a small but significant moment occurred. My dad was helping me with a household task, and for the first time, he commented not on my actions, but on me. "You seem different," he said, carefully choosing his words. I froze for a moment, unsure what he meant. But then I realized it wasn't judgment, it was recognition. "Different how?" I asked cautiously. "More confident, more yourself," he replied. His words, simple as they were, hit me deeply. It was validation, not from anyone else, but from someone whose opinion mattered profoundly. School continued to offer tests, both subtle and overt. I faced teasing, sideways glances, and questions that sometimes caught me off guard. Yet, each encounter became a lesson in resilience. I learned to respond with grace, humor, or quiet confidence, depending on the moment. Every time I faced discomfort and chose authenticity, I felt a growing strength within me. The reflection in the mirror no longer intimidated me. It encouraged me. By mid-year, I had begun to fully embrace my style, both at home and in public. Subtle changes, a new hairstyle, a carefully chosen outfit, a slight adjustment in posture gave me a sense of control and identity. I noticed the difference in how people treated me, but more importantly, I noticed the difference in how I treated myself. I had learned to value authenticity over approval, courage over comfort, and self-expression over conformity. Then came another turning point. Our school announced a creative showcase, inviting students to present performances, art, or spoken word. Clara encouraged me to participate again, this time with something deeply personal, a monologue about self-discovery and courage. At first, fear gripped me. Speaking in front of an audience, exposing my journey, felt terrifying. But then I remembered the summer, the first pink dress, the small victories, and the lessons learned. I realized that hiding was no longer an option. I worked tirelessly on the monologue, practicing gestures, expressions, and pacing. I chose an outfit that reflected my identity: elegant, confident, and unmistakably me. On the day of the showcase, I stepped onto the stage, heart pounding, and felt a moment of pure terror. But as I began, I let the words flow naturally, drawing strength from every step of my journey. I spoke about fear, growth, self-discovery, and the courage to be oneself despite uncertainty. By the end, the applause was overwhelming, not just for the performance, but for the authenticity behind it. Clara hugged me afterward, whispering, "You've done more than perform. You've shown the world who you are." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that transformation wasn't a destination, it was an ongoing journey, one measured not in appearances, but in courage, reflection, and the ability to navigate life with authenticity. The months that followed were a continuation of small, meaningful victories. I began helping friends with their own challenges, using what I had learned to encourage and support others. At home, our dynamic shifted. I wasn't just a student of transformation, I was a participant, sometimes even a guide, showing Clara and my dad how far I had come. The reflection in the mirror became a source of pride, not anxiety. I had learned to inhabit my own presence fully, with grace, confidence, and joy. Looking back now, I understand that the journey from nephew to niece was more than a story of clothes or appearances. It was a story of courage, resilience, and self-discovery. Every fear faced, every small victory, every moment of doubt had contributed to the person I had become. The first pink dress, the secret lessons, the summer that seemed like punishment, they were all gifts, guiding me toward authenticity and self-love. And now, every time I step in front of the mirror, adjust a ribbon, or choose an outfit, I see someone who has learned to embrace herself fully. Transformation isn't about changing for others, it's about discovering and inhabiting your true self. The journey continues, but I face it with courage, gratitude, and pride. From hesitant nephew to confident niece, from fear to authenticity, from hiding to being seen, I have finally met myself, and I carry that discovery with me every day. The following weeks were a mixture of routine and revelation. Every morning, I faced the familiar challenge of choosing how to present myself to the world. Some days, I felt bold and ready, carefully selecting outfits that reflected who I was inside. Other days, doubt crept in and I considered retreating into the safety of old habits. But increasingly, I found that the act of choosing to show up, to be seen, to inhabit my identity became easier. At school, the subtle tests continued. A friend might ask, curious but hesitant, "Are you really comfortable like this?" And I would pause, reflecting on how far I had come. Some students whispered or stared, but I learned to meet their curiosity with quiet confidence rather than defensiveness. A few times, I faced teasing that stung sharply. Once, a group of classmates cornered me near my locker, laughing as they commented on my style. My heart raced, and for a moment, fear nearly overwhelmed me. But then I remembered the summer lessons, Clara's guidance, and the moments of bravery that had built over months. I straightened my back, met their eyes calmly, and said, "Yes, this is me. And I'm proud of it." The laughter stopped, replaced by stunned silence. Those small victories facing judgment and standing firm became milestones in my ongoing journey. Home remained a sanctuary where I could experiment and grow. Clara's lessons evolved, no longer just about outfits or gestures, but about poise, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence. We spent afternoons discussing subtle ways to communicate confidence and authenticity, how to carry oneself in a conversation, how to respond to challenges with composure, how to internalize courage, so it became second nature. Occasionally, she would challenge me with little tasks, arranging a room elegantly, practicing polite conversation, or expressing myself through creative writing. Each assignment felt like a stepping stone, building strength, patience, and awareness. One evening, a significant moment occurred when my dad noticed a subtle shift in me. I had just finished preparing a family meal with careful attention, setting the table and arranging the dishes neatly. He paused, studying me, and said quietly, "You seem different lately. More confident, more yourself." I froze for a second, unsure how to respond, but then realized that this recognition from someone I loved deeply was validating in a way words often aren't. "Thanks," I replied softly. That simple acknowledgement reinforced everything I had been learning. The journey was as much about internal growth as external presentation. Spring brought more opportunities to test my confidence. Our school announced a creative showcase, inviting students to present performances, art, or spoken word. Clara encouraged me to participate, with a monologue reflecting my journey of self-discovery and courage. Initially, fear gripped me. Speaking in front of peers and teachers, exposing my private journey, felt terrifying. But then I remembered the lessons of the summer, the trembling in the pink dress, and the private victories before an empty mirror. I realized that hiding was no longer an option. I practiced tirelessly, refining my delivery, gestures, and expressions. My outfit for the showcase was carefully chosen, subtle yet elegant, expressive yet natural. On the day of the performance, my heart pounded as I stepped onto the stage. The first words trembled slightly, but I drew on every lesson learned. Each phrase, each gesture, each pause was intentional, reflecting months of growth. By the end, the applause was overwhelming, not just for the words I had spoken, but for the authenticity behind them. Clara hugged me afterward, whispering, "You've done more than perform. You've shown the world who you are." Following the showcase, I noticed subtle but meaningful changes in how people interacted with me. Friends approached with curiosity and respect, classmates treated me with newfound consideration, and strangers sometimes gave me small nods of acknowledgement. These interactions, though simple, reinforced the value of courage, authenticity, and self-expression. I began to understand that transformation was ongoing. It wasn't a destination, but a series of choices, reflections, and brave steps taken consistently. At home, life felt equally rich and complex. Clara continued to challenge and support me, sometimes with humor, sometimes with quiet encouragement. We experimented with fashion, creative expression, and even etiquette, turning daily activities into opportunities for growth. Occasionally, small setbacks tested my resolve: a poorly timed comment at school, a teasing remark from a cousin, or a moment of self-doubt in front of the mirror. Each time, I drew on the lessons of the past year, using them to reinforce confidence and resilience. By summer, I had fully embraced my identity. I no longer worried about judgment or conformity. Instead, I focused on authenticity, self-expression, and courage. Each morning, I would look in the mirror and see not just the reflection of my appearance, but the culmination of months of growth, lessons, and bravery. I had learned to inhabit my own presence fully, to meet the world with poise, and to trust in myself regardless of external opinion. Reflecting now, I understand that my transformation from hesitant, timid nephew to confident, proud niece was never about clothing alone. It was about courage, self-awareness, authenticity, and resilience. The pink dress, the private lessons, the challenges and victories, they were all stepping stones leading to a fuller understanding of myself. Transformation isn't a singular event. It's an ongoing journey, one measured not in appearances, but in courage, integrity, and self-acceptance. Every day, as I adjust a ribbon, choose an outfit, or practice a subtle gesture, I remember the summer that began it all. That first dress, the trembling, the secret lessons, they weren't punishments. They were gifts, guiding me towards self-discovery, confidence, and joy. From fear to courage, from hiding to being seen, from nephew to niece, I carry this journey with me always, grateful for every challenge, every lesson, and every moment of growth that has shaped the person I am today. Summer was in full swing, and with it came a sense of liberation I hadn't felt before. The confidence I had nurtured over the past year had begun to solidify, but life still threw small, unexpected tests my way. One afternoon, I received an invitation to a neighborhood talent show, and while I felt excitement, there was also that familiar knot of fear in my stomach. What if I faltered? What if someone laughed or whispered behind my back? Clara noticed my hesitation. She approached quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Fear isn't the enemy," she said softly. "It's the signal that something matters. Embrace it. Step into it. That's how you grow." I took her words to heart, practicing daily in front of the mirror. Each movement, each gesture, each subtle shift in posture became a rehearsal not just for the performance, but for life itself. The day of the show arrived. I wore a carefully chosen outfit, one that felt authentic yet bold, expressive yet natural. My hair was styled just right, and a small ribbon added a touch of personal flair. As I stepped onto the stage, my heart raced, but I remembered the first pink dress, the summer lessons, the countless moments of practice and self-reflection. The audience was large neighbors, friends, and strangers alike, but I focused only on the message I wanted to convey: authenticity, courage, and self-discovery. As I spoke, I felt an unfamiliar but welcome sensation: calm. The words flowed naturally, each phrase carrying months of growth, lessons learned, and victories won. The applause at the end was resounding, but what struck me most was the quiet recognition in the eyes of my family and friends. Clara's smile was radiant, proud yet understated. My dad nodded approvingly, and even a few classmates who had once whispered or stared offered small words of encouragement. After the performance, I realized that the transformation wasn't just external. It wasn't the outfits, the hairstyles, or even the gestures that defined me. It was the courage to inhabit my identity fully, the ability to face judgment with poise, and the willingness to embrace both vulnerability and strength. Each small victory, each quiet moment of bravery, had contributed to this realization. Over the following weeks, life continued to unfold in small, meaningful ways. I became more comfortable navigating social interactions, more confident in expressing my thoughts, and more deliberate in how I presented myself to the world. School posed its challenges: occasional teasing, curious questions, and moments of self-doubt, but I had learned to meet each situation with calm confidence. Every day offered opportunities to reinforce what I had discovered: that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. At home, Clara remained my steadfast guide. Our interactions shifted from instruction to collaboration. We explored creative expression, shared quiet reflections, and occasionally laughed over the small absurdities of my transformation journey. She encouraged me to mentor younger cousins and friends, using my experiences to help them navigate challenges of their own. In doing so, I realized that transformation wasn't just personal, it could ripple outward, touching the lives of others in subtle but meaningful ways.
There were still setbacks.
A teasing comment from a cousin, a misunderstanding with a classmate, or a fleeting moment of self-doubt could momentarily shake my confidence. But over time, I learned to navigate these moments with grace, humor, and resilience. Each challenge became an opportunity to practice patience, self-assurance, and reflection. Slowly, I understood that the journey of transformation wasn't linear. It ebbed and flowed, but each wave contributed to growth. By late summer, I had fully embraced my identity. The shy, hesitant nephew had become a confident, self-assured niece, comfortable both in appearance and in spirit. Each morning, I looked in the mirror and saw not just a reflection of my appearance, but a reflection of courage, resilience, and authenticity. I understood that transformation was ongoing, a process measured not in external validation but in the ability to inhabit one's true self with pride and integrity. One evening, as Clara and I sat in the living room reflecting on the journey, she said softly, "You've done more than I ever imagined. You've embraced yourself fully, faced fear, and discovered strength you didn't know you had." Her words filled me with a profound sense of gratitude. I realized that the summer that had begun as what I thought was a punishment had been a catalyst, a gift that had led me to courage, self-discovery, and self-love. Looking back now, I see the entire journey with clarity. The first pink dress, the secret lessons, the moments of doubt and triumph, they were all necessary. Transformation isn't about changing to fit the expectations of others. It's about discovering, embracing, and inhabiting your true self. From fear to courage, from hiding to being seen, from nephew to niece, I had traversed a path that reshaped my life in ways I never could have imagined. Today, every glance in the mirror is a reminder of the journey, the challenges, and the victories. Every choice, gesture, and expression reflects the courage to be authentic. Transformation is not a single event, it is a lifetime of choices, reflections, and small acts of bravery. And I carry that understanding with me every day, grateful for the lessons, the guidance, and the person I have become. From the trembling moments in the first pink dress to the confident steps on stage, from whispered doubts to public acknowledgement, from fear to self-love, this journey has taught me that the true measure of transformation is not how others see you, but how fully and bravely you inhabit yourself. And in that, I have finally met the person I was always meant to be.